Hey Buff Dudes, in this video I want to go over the muscles that are responsible for elbow flexion, or in Buff Dudes terms, guns, and my favorite bicep exercise that helped me build my arms over the years. First, it's a good idea to understand the muscles, the origins, insertions, and the actions of the muscles so you can make sense of why you should train your arms the way you do and how they activate during certain exercises. The main elbow flexors are the biceps brachii, which is Latin, biceps meaning two-headed and brachii meaning of the arm. And those two heads consist of a long head and a short head. Now, some other important helpers in elbow flexion are the brachialis, which is a smaller muscle group located underneath the biceps brachii, and the brachioradialis, which is a bigger muscle located in the forearms, but due to its origin and insertion, it will help with elbow flexion as well. Now you might be asking yourself, wait a second, what the hell is an origin and insertion? Now, all muscles have an origin and an insertion, both of which are where the muscle's tendon attaches to the bone. And a simple way of remembering which is an origin and which is an insertion is that the point of origin will not move during an exercise, and the point of insertion will be moving during an exercise. So just imagine your joints are the levers and your muscles are the pulleys. Now the origin is more like the anchor, and when pulled, the insertion is the point that moves the lever into place. Now that we have all that cleared up, let's go over the origin and insertions on each muscle. The origin point of the long head of the biceps is located on the supraglenoid tubercle of the scapula by way of running through the bicipital groove, which is a little groove that separates the greater and lesser tubercle on the head of the humerus. Now as you can see, it's called the long head because, well, it's longer than the short head. The short head's origin is located on the coracoid process, which is this little bird beak looking thing, which is fitting because coracoid is Greek for like a raven's beak. Both the long and short heads insert at the radial tuberosity, which is what will be pulled into a flex position from an extended position. And because both the long and short heads of the biceps span over two joints, the shoulder and elbow joints, they are called biarticular. The brachialis muscle, which is located beneath the biceps, its origin is on the anterior aspect of the humerus, the medial and lateral surface, and the insertion is the tuberosity of ulna. And the brachioradialis, the big forearm muscle, its origin is in the proximal part of lateral supraepicondylar ridge of humerus and adjacent intermuscular septum, or more simply put, the humerus. And the insertion of the brachioradialis is the lower surface distal end of radius. These muscles, the brachialis and brachioradialis, since they only span over one joint, the elbow joint, they're called monoarticular. The action of the biceps brachii and brachialis will be described as powerful flexors of the elbow joint, with the brachioradialis being an accessory flexor in the mid-pronated grip. But the biceps brachii will also help with supination of the forearm and will even be used as an accessory flexor of the arm at the glenohumeral joint, or shoulder. Now something I want to touch on briefly is the length-tension relationship. Now this is when the muscle is placed into an optimal lengthened position and in turn creates more force and activation in that muscle. Actin and myosin are tiny filaments that are located in the muscle fibers, and they are what cause muscle contraction. They pull on each other and cross over to create the shortening of the muscle, and they release and separate when the muscle is lengthened. Now, if the muscle is overly stretched, the actin and myosin have a more difficult time pulling on each other and overlapping. Now, if the muscle is already shortened, the actin and myosin will already be somewhat overlapped, and that will decrease strength. Now, this will apply more to biarticular muscles because since they are located over two joints, you'll be able to increase the distance between the origin and insertion by changing the position of the joints and in turn creating more stretch in that muscle. Now this is a way of understanding why the muscles work the way they do and how incorporating different exercises in the same type of movement, like elbow flexion, can focus on different muscles and help you build better arms. So it's time to put all this info to good use and go over my favorite bicep exercises and why they are so effective. My first favorite exercise is going to be equally focusing on both heads of the biceps and the brachialis. It's the all too classic barbell curl. Due to the straightness of the bar, you'll be forced into a supinated grip throughout the full range of motion of the exercise. And since we know the insertion of the long head and short head of the biceps is on the radial tuberosity and the brachialis insertion is on the tuberosity of ulna, we can see how when the forearm is supinated, both the biceps brachii and brachialis will be in an optimal place to pull the forearm into a flexed position. This will allow you to handle a lot of weight and get amazing activation in both the biceps and brachialis, but you'll also be able to change hand positions for different muscle stimuli. For instance, by widening your grip, you'll now emphasize the stretch in the short head of the biceps by increasing the distance between the origin and insertion, and in turn, promote more activation. So by understanding where the muscle origins and insertions are, you can easily find ways to help target certain areas. In my own experience, I would religiously use barbell curls on my arm days. Using those different hand positions like wide grip and closer grip, I would be constantly increasing the reps with the same weight or increasing the weight with the same reps, decreasing rest times between sets, or utilizing something like drop sets, which is all working in something called progressive overload. You are continually overloading the muscle, in this case your biceps, which are then primed for muscular adaptation and growth, which over time, with the right nutrition and rest, you'll see those hills grow into Mount Everest-sized peaks. My second favorite exercise is incline dumbbell curls. Placing your body at an incline and allowing your arms to hang down, you'll find that having your elbow placed farther back, that your long head is placed into a stretch position due to the origin being located at the supraglenoid tubercle. And when your muscle is placed in a stretch position, as we found out earlier with the length-tension relationship, it is primed to be more effective with its contraction, therein placing more emphasis on that muscle. And with dumbbells, you'll also be able to use supination with the movement, which, as you know, supination is another movement that the biceps brachii helps with. So the long head will not only work more effectively in that stretch position, but now you'll be adding another movement by supinating your forearm. Now this exercise won't be focusing on as much weight as the barbell curl, but instead you want to work on a very slow and controlled tempo in each rep, feeling that stretch and supinate the hell out of those curls. The next one is going to be hammer curls. This exercise will be focusing on the brachioradialis and the brachialis muscles. Due to the mid-pronated grip, it will turn the bones at an angle where the brachialis and the brachioradialis are in a more effective place to pull the elbow into a flexed position. Now this isn't saying that the biceps aren't doing any work at all, but there will be less emphasis on the biceps and more on the brachialis and brachioradialis. So as you can see, performing exercises that still work in elbow flexion, but with a slight change in hand position like hammer curls, will allow you to help build a more complete and rounded look in your arms. You won't overdevelop your biceps by only performing one exercise alone, but rather you'll want to change the positions and exercise to help maximize your arm development. Concentration curls. Now this is one I would usually end my workouts with and use relatively light weight. By placing your elbow in front of you and supporting the back of your arm on a bench, you'll immediately feel, as the name explains, a more concentrated curl. There will be less emphasis on the long head and more on the short head and brachialis due to the placement of your elbow and the shoulder being in a more stabilized position on the bench. In turn, letting your long head relax a bit more by not having to isometrically hold the shoulder in place at its origin or be in a more stretched state. Now, I would always incorporate a super supination, as I like to call it, by rotating my hand as much as I could at the top position, trying to pull my pinky into my shoulder and flex as hard as I could. Now, it would burn like hell and it felt like I could feel my peaks growing as I did it. And I mean, sometimes that mental aspect can be as powerful as the exercise itself. Reverse curls. This one is similar to hammer curls in the way of putting focus on the brachioradialis and brachialis muscles because of the pronated grip. Although in this case, instead of a mid-pronated grip, you're in a fully pronated grip. Now it can be uncomfortable for most people to perform this with a straight bar, so using an easy curl bar is probably your best option. And again, the biceps will still be working, but the brachioradialis and brachialis will be in a better position to help with elbow flexion. So keep that weight lighter on this one and make sure you keep those elbows tight to your body and you'll no doubt immediately feel it working. That's it. A quick rundown of the anatomy of the elbow flexors and my top favorite biceps exercises. Now I would usually pair up triceps, biceps, and forearms together in a day once a week for a killer arm pump and stick pretty close with this list. Now hopefully this video helped, and next time you work arms, you'll know how to customize your workouts to focus on the areas you want. Now if you enjoyed this more in-depth look into the muscles and exercises, let us know if you'd like us to cover any more muscles of the body. So, as always, stay safe and stay buff.